Welcome to What's in the Pot. I'm your host Sean Grande, and today we are making instant pot corn soup. It's What's in the Pot. Thank you very much for tuning into What's in the Pot. I'm your host Sean Grande. So I have my instant pot set on saute mode, on the low saute mode, and I'm adding half an onion. We're gonna let that onion saute for a few minutes. After about 3 minutes of letting the onion saute, I'm adding 3 cloves of garlic, and we're gonna let this saute for a little bit with the onions and bringing out that nice flavor. Now I'm gonna add about 2 small sweet peppers. You can use green, I'm using yellow and orange, it's really up to you. Add a little bit of salt, and then we're gonna be adding equivalent to about maybe a teaspoon of the Bertie's pimento seasoning. And now I'm gonna add my split peas. I'm using half a cup of split peas because I don't want it too thick. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the split peas and let that saute up with the veggies and the onions. So I'm adding about 2 cups of water to this mixture because we're gonna start pressurizing the split peas very soon. I'm adding 1 teaspoon of turmeric and equivalent to maybe about a teaspoon of the Badia complete seasoning. You can add a little bit more if you like. Our next ingredient we're adding is some black pepper. I'm using this finely coarse ground black pepper, really any kind of black pepper you like, just a touch to add some flavor, and a little bit of this adobo seasoning. You don't want to add too much. This is maybe about half a teaspoon. The adobo seasoning can be a little bit salty. We're going to give it a good mix, and then what we're going to go ahead and do is then start pressurizing this. Once we put the lid on, we're going to set the Instant Pot to manually pressure for 12 minutes. After we manually release the Instant Pot, just remember that there can be a lot of steam, so be careful when you're opening it after doing a manual pressure cooking. You can see the consistency of the split peas. It is nice and soft. So because it's nice and soft, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the hand blender, and we're going to be making it nice and silky smooth. Kind of like consistency you would be getting if you were making dal. So now we're going to start building our base to add all our other vegetables, our provisions. So I'm adding 2 cups of water, give that a good mix. I'm also going to be using this coconut milk powder that I got from Kalu Box, and I'm using 2 tablespoons of coconut milk powder mixed with 1 cup of warm water. Now we're going to give that a good mix, and that's going to create that nice creaminess that the coconut milk gives. So now I'm going to be adding our provisions. I'm adding some potato and I'm adding some sweet potato. I didn't have any pumpkin, so I went ahead and added 1 potato and 1 sweet potato cut up into nice chunks. I'm also adding 4 ears of corn, and I have those just cut into circles. Once you give that a nice stir, you want to make sure you get all the provisions mixed into the pot, because when we start pressuring, we want to make sure everything cooks evenly. I'm adding 1 whole carrot chopped up into circles. You can chop it a little bit more fine, and I'm adding about another cup of water, and we just want to make sure we have enough water to make sure that all the veggies cook. Now I'm going to be adding the equivalent to about maybe 3 tablespoons of green seasoning. What I like to do is I like to freeze some of my green seasoning in a Ziploc bag and break off pieces, especially if I'm making a stew or a soup or even curry. You want to make sure you give it a good mix when you add the green seasoning, especially if it's frozen, because we want to make sure that green seasoning is all through there. And we're adding about a teaspoon, a bit of that pimento seasoning, and a small handful of green onions. I like the flavor the green onions gives the soup. Give it a good mix. We're going to add a few more ingredients. We're going to add a little bit more adobo. And remember, salt is something to taste, so I'm using a pinch of salt just to add a little bit more taste. I felt like it needed a little bit more flavor. The last thing I'm going to add is a little bit more water, some thyme, and a hot pepper. We're going to put that lid on, and we're going to pressure this for another 10 minutes. Now to start my dumpling mixture, I'm starting with 1 cup of flour and half a teaspoon of salt, and I'm using about 1/4 cup of water. Now you know Caribbean soup is not soup unless you have dumpling, especially corn soup. For me, that's one of my favorite things besides the corn in the soup and the flavor is the dumpling. So what we're going to do is we're going to be giving that a mixture, and just add your water slowly and then mix as you go. Now if you add too much water, add a little bit back more flour to kind of thicken it up. But what we're doing is we're going to be turning it and mixing it. Then I like to use a spatula, but I'm going to go ahead and use my hands and mix it until you have a nice firm consistency. I let my dough rest for about maybe 10 minutes, and then what we're going to do is we're breaking up each piece into nice little small little pieces. Just roll them in your hands, and then we're going to be putting that in the soup. there you can see our final product of our dumplings. And we're going to be adding those in the Instant Pot. But what I did was the pot was going for 10 minutes. So I've released the pressure and I've taken off the lid. The one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the pepper, give it a good mix, and we're going to start adding the rest of our ingredients. So right before I add my dumplings, I'm going to be adding a little bit more stock into the pot. If you don't have vegetable stock, you can go ahead and just use some water or a Maggi cube mixed with water. And we'll be adding the dumplings in. As we add the dumplings, we're going to be make sure we give it a good mix so all the pieces kind of get all around in the pot. And then we're going to put it on back on pressure mode for about 5 minutes. After 10 minutes, we release the pressure, and this is our final product. You can see the dumplings are cooked. The soup is absolutely perfect. There's nothing else you need to add. So I'm going to give you a little zoom in view of the soup. You can see everything here. You can see all the ingredients are cooked properly. I'm going to put some of this in a bowl. Man, I can't wait to eat this. But thank you very much for tuning into What's in the Pot. I'm your host, Sean Grande. I hope you really like this video. Corn soup is one of my favorite things to eat. It's one of the best things to make too if you're having friends or family over, or if you're hungover, because this is the best thing to eat when you're hungover. You can see the corn, you can see the seasoning, you can see the dumpling, everything's cooked absolutely perfectly. Thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.